Hello and welcome to Bad Romance, the series on my channel where I talk about bad romances. And for the few subscribers that I do have, yes, I'm in a new environment, and I just want to say that the books behind me are not all the books I own. The majority of the books I own are in storage. This is just like my TBR and like favorites and rereads, so that is what is behind me, so don't judge me too harshly on the books behind me. But yes, welcome back to Bad Romance. I have made a few videos already in this series, and in being completely honest, I was not sure what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to talk about the specific books I was talking about and then have it be in a series called Bad Romance. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing, but with Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haites, I have figured it out. As an avid reader, one of my biggest genres is romance. And if you are also a romance reader, you know that there are in the genre so many different sub-genres of romance and what it can be. And one of the big ones, in my opinion, are bad romances. I did more, for the Lady Gaga song, ra 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 da da, mama, mama, gaga, ooh la la, want your bad romance, and that's why I called it that. There are so many different kinds of romances. There are dark romances, there are erotic romances, there are good romances, contemporary ones, and there are bad ones. I've just realized that in reading the genre of romance, I can go into a romance and thinking it's going to be one way and it ends up another. And specifically with the videos I've made in this series, that's what happened. And especially I read them at a very young age, and then rereading them, I'm like, oh, these are trash, like they're really bad. Despite my best efforts, even if I really work to make sure that I don't end up reading these bad romances, it's going to happen anyway. And particularly it's going to happen because a lot of synopsises are very misleading, and there really is a very large audience of people who are more than willing and wanting to read about these toxic relationships and these toxic dynamics. I am not one of them, but I end up reading them anyway. That's why I want to capitalize off of it. I'm not trying to take the fun out of romances, dark romances. I'm not trying to finger wag at people and tell them, oh, what you should and should not read. As long as people are reading, I don't care. Read whatever you want for the most part. I do want to examine them more, especially if I'm subjecting myself to reading them. I would love to share my opinion with others and have others share their opinions with me. So that is the purpose of this series. And I also want to try to understand what people enjoy so much about them and what it says about them, and maybe even what it says about the authors, them as people and as writers. So as you can see by the title, this video is about both Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haites by Jessa Hastings, and I just want to give my overall thoughts on these two books. And firstly, my main question with both of them, and while I was reading, are these books meant to show and portray the inherent shallowness of rich people? Like, they have all their material needs met, so they have nothing better to do besides make the lives of their loved ones and the people around them difficult. The only substance I was able to find while reading these books were the universal experiences that all women have when it comes to their relationships with men intimately, especially, but I will be getting more into that when I talk about the characters. Overall, the writing is not that good, but it is written in a way that makes you want to keep reading. Like, something that was a really big pet peeve in both of them, but particularly Magnolia Parks, was when the side characters end up acting more like spectators or like the reader themselves rather than actual friends or family members of these people. They're more like, oh, you guys have this wrong and da da da, and it's more like lecturing and like being like, clearly this is the problem, instead of like how you are with friends, or I guess that's just how those characters are as friends, which it just really falls flat for me and kind of makes those characters pointless in my opinion. Someone on Reddit said that Magnolia and Daisy are the exact same, just in different fonts, and I could not agree more. I understand that these are the kind of stories where the characters are just unlikable, and that's okay, but all the characters are pretty much insufferable, and it's very hard to get through. If it wasn't for like the drama, it would not be an entertaining read at all. I read both of these books pretty fast, but they did leave something to be desired for me. A positive, I can say, and part of the reason why I ended up reading both of them, and I'm talking about both of them now, is because they don't take place at the exact same time, but they are pretty parallel, and there are events that happen in both books that like cross over, and I love stuff like that. I love being able to see these different scenes from different perspectives and in the minds of different characters. And something overall I don't like, and another reason why I want to make these videos about bad romances, is because I do not like it when I have no idea what the author is trying to say or do when it comes to writing relationships like this and stories like this. Everyone's toxic and everyone's messy and it's entertaining, but there are very few lessons that are ever learned. It's like people can be forgiven for their actions, but there's very little accountability or responsibility ever taken. And in the videos I've already made, in particularly the one about Beautiful Disaster and On Dublin Street, I talk about how I read them at much too young of an age, but thankfully I wasn't so impacted by them that I was striving for relationships like that, but it wasn't anything within the book itself that helped me come to that conclusion. Just as growing and changing as a person, I did that myself, but there are a lot of people who can read that and at an impressionable age and time and be like, oh, you know, I want something like that. I want the drama and the of love, and I want to hurt and I want to be in pain, and I'm like, I do not want that kind of struggle. I just don't like it if I can't tell if the author is just having fun and experimenting and doing whatever, or if they genuinely like are kind of fantasizing and wanting to be in a dynamic like that. Jessa Hastings, the author, is an interesting figure to me. From what I've researched, and I guess I won't call it research, but Googled, I couldn't really find that much about her. The main thing I found was that Magnolia Parks was originally self-published, but then it got really popular, so then it was traditionally published. Obviously, they're pretty popular now. And I have to say, with how many male characters there are in comparison to the female characters, she does give me pick-me energy, but I do not want to speculate. I don't want to be calling her names and stuff. It's just what my gut is telling me, but I could be wrong. However, I know she has been in some hot water lately for her use of AI and her speaking about it in like a positive way, and that is 100% questionable, especially as an author, and especially with the quality of her writing. It would not be too far-fetched to reach the conclusion that she may or may not use AI in assisting her to write her stories. But again, that is all alleged. I do not know. I haven't honestly looked into that much, but I definitely know she was like talking positively about AI and how she uses it and stuff, and that I believe the cover for her like upcoming book was potentially made with AI. So yeah, she was definitely in some hot water for that. And it just sucked because I really thought these books were going to be a bit more playful than they were, but it was really just everyone emotionally manipulating everyone else, as well as being incredibly emotionally immature. Now I'm going to be talking about the characters in each book and then some of the events that happen. So spoiler alert, if you have not read Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haites, please stop watching at this point. So starting with Magnolia Parks, I gave Magnolia Parks 2 stars, and we are starting with BJ. And the first thing I have to say is that BJ is the problem. I do not know how, I do not know why, and I do not know when he became the problem, but all I know is that he is most definitely the problem. Him and Jonah, because they're the oldest, as well as just the dynamics of this big friend group that they have. But I need more detailed backstory on him that I'm not going to be getting because I'm not going to keep reading the books. But I wish there was a little bit more of just him without Magnolia and his home life and stuff, because he's behaving this way for a reason, and I would very much like to know why. I have to say his name is horrible. BJ isn't bad. Baxter is a pretty nice name. Baxter James Ballantyne. Ballantyne just isn't that good of a last name in my opinion. And then they call him Beej. Like, ew. In this portrayal of with this character and how messy he is Jessa trying to humanize cheaters. Now, I have a very low tolerance for cheaters. I have to be honest. I cannot stand a cheater. However, Nia Ola is a TikToker, an internet person, and a very smart person that I really like and whose content I really enjoy. And she has talked about her experience in being the other woman. And I don't know if she's cheated on other people, but she has 100% been very open about the fact that she has been the other woman and knew that she was the other woman, and the reaction that people have, and that almost like if they've been cheated on, that they replace her with the actual person that their partner cheated on them with, and they like kind of take it out on her in that moment. But she makes a very good point that within a relationship, cheating is not the worst thing that a partner can do to another partner. When there's like actual abuse, all different kinds of horrible things one partner can do to another, I have to agree with her on that it's seen as this like huge big moral failing, when humans really are just inherently contradictory, and humans break promises, they make mistakes, they do bad things to the people they care about, and that's just how it happens. And obviously that's very true for BJ, how he very much cares for Magnolia. I think that's questionable, but they do love each other in a very toxic way. Despite that love and how they were finally together, he cheated on her, and especially with her very close friend, which is quite messed up in my opinion. Yeah, if you want to hear more about Nia Ola talking about her personal experience, I suggest you go check out her TikTok and stuff, because she's very smart and she's very cool. He clearly has a problem with cheating and just like sex in general, because despite them being in that relationship, the moment Magnolia wasn't around, he was like, he cheated on her because he wanted to. That is exactly what he told Magnolia, and that's his only reason. It's like, oh, that makes me mad. Every time BJ would go off on Magnolia, he was 100,000% projecting. He was messy, toxic, overly possessive, violent, aggressive, all of the flags, all of the red flags, a walking red flag. And in Daisy Haites, in Christian's perspective, which I'm going to be talking about, he is the one that really points out how reckless, he uses the word reckless to describe BJ, and how BJ is the problem, especially when you take into account these are like supposedly supposed to be white collar criminals, and it's like in this group of people who are professional criminals, and one of the oldest is described as being reckless by the second of someone in his own crime family, is quite telling. But the last thing I have to say about BJ is that he is the problem. Sorry if the angle keeps changing. I freaking kicked where my tripod is, so it moved and I don't remember where it went. Anyway, next I'm talking about Magnolia. I have to be honest, I do not know if Magnolia is a bitch or not. I don't know if she knows if she's a bitch or not. I don't think Magnolia knows who she is at all, but I do have a feeling she's probably on the autism spectrum, definitely neurodivergent in some way, with how she can look at somebody's outfit and be like, they're wearing this. That is wild to me. I don't think that's just some hat trick. I think it's a signifier of neurodivergence. And then seeing Magnolia in Daisy Haites' perspective was so refreshing, because it's like finally someone who's not just like obsessed with Magnolia and thinks that she can do no wrong and that she's perfect, she's an angel on this planet. And then also in Daisy Haites, because within Magnolia's own perspective, it's very hard to get a read on her. She's a very hard to read character, even in her own head. So it's seeing how other people view her helps almost more than her own perspective, if that makes sense. But Christian, when he was with Magnolia, and how like he's obviously obsessed with her, he loves her and all that stuff, and like she likes him too, but she likes BJ more. I couldn't tell if she was actively like trying to manipulate Christian into really liking her and like wanting him to do what she wants, or if that's just how she is as a person. I cannot tell. But definitely, if you take BJ out of the equation, Magnolia wouldn't be so messed up as she is, honestly. And then it was funny, at the end of Daisy Haites is a Magnolia scene, and it was funny because it's honestly like one of the most honest moments, in my opinion, that Magnolia has had, and it wasn't even her book. It's the aftermath of everything that happens, which I will be talking about in a bit. How she hooks up with Tom's actor friend, and after it's over, she's like, I felt numb, I didn't feel anything, which is why I did it again. Her as a character, it would make sense if like the main adjective to describe her would be she's numb to everything and in her life, because of just how she moves and how it's like being in her head and just her as a person. And it's something I talk about with Daisy Haites even more because it's very more blatant in that scene. But I just think it's funny how a lot of women go into sexual interactions with men and hope to get something out of it, hope to gain something out of it, but most of the time they just feel like something has been taken from them, or they just feel empty inside. But then they continue to do it just because it's like, what else am I gonna do? I just think it's funny how men clearly do not even notice like the headspace of a woman the majority of the time, if that woman is allowing them to have access to their body in that way. And I just think it's something that's really interesting into looking a little bit harder at, but I will talk about that more with Daisy Haites. So the last character I'm going to be talking about in Magnolia Parks is Tom England, of course. He's the best character. Oh my gosh, like when he came around, I was like, oh my gosh, like finally like a level-headed adult that is around. I could give him grief because of their age gap, but I'm like, it really doesn't matter, especially with how like Magnolia has had a crush on him for so long, and it's just kind of like sticking it back to BJ. He was the best part of the book. Oh my goodness. He was such a breath of fresh air. And in talking about Tom England, we're going to talk about the ending of Magnolia Parks, which was literally the reason I decided to read Daisy Haites, because the way it ended, I was like, oh, that is what I was looking for. So obviously the ending of Magnolia Parks, it was a great, or not great, but a very entertaining turn of events, and what a way to end a book. Oh my goodness. So I would just like to say, BJ does not deserve Magnolia. Magnolia is way better off without BJ in her life. However, if Magnolia is gonna break up with Tom England to be with BJ, they deserve each other. They deserve each other. When they were getting back together, I was like, okay, why are they meeting? It was like under a tree or something. It was like at a tree. I don't even remember. But I was like, what is this happening? And then like, I think they started kissing, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then it was like, they were talking about getting back together. I was like, no. I'm like, what is going on? And then they got back together, and I literally felt sick to my stomach. I was like, no, Magnolia, no, what are you doing? I don't remember having such a visceral reaction to two characters getting back together than that. I literally felt grossed out. I was like, no. Especially when BJ goes, and no more asking questions you're not getting the answer to. That's me. I gotta know now. I've got to know about now. What do you mean? What do you mean? No asking more questions. I got to know the answer now. Are you crazy? And then, this might seem harsh, I do not care, for Magnolia being a stupid idiot. I think she got what was coming to her. All right. I think she kind of deserved what happened. She needed to stand up. And then on top of her getting what she deserved, Tom England was right. He said, I don't know when, I don't know how, and I don't know why, but he is going to hurt you again. And what? Not 24 hours later, Magnolia learns that the person that BJ cheated on her with when they were finally together was her best friend dog. Whew. But due to that stellar ending, I had to read Daisy Haites, and unfortunately, it was a letdown. With Daisy Haites, I did give this one 2 stars as well, and from the jump, starting in Daisy's perspective, the weakness in the writing showed. If you take out the names and just have her, him, she, just nothing but pronouns, no names, you would not have been able, or I would not have been able to tell if it was Magnolia or Daisy. I would not have been able to tell the difference. I can say that as the story goes on, Daisy's voice does become a lot more clear, and Daisy and Magnolia are similar in how big of simps they are for the men in their lives, but Daisy does have a bit more oomph. She really pushes back and kind of just doesn't take anything, but Magnolia is just kind of pathetic. And I can't lie, there isn't really that much that I can say about Daisy as a character. This book really fell flat for me, but the most standout part was the section where after Daisy and Christian have their like blow up, or it's bad. I don't even remember what happened, but obviously Daisy and Christian stopped talking, and from that backlash and how upset Daisy is, she ends up hooking up with Rome, but like, it's like a marathon, you know, if you've read it, you know. And I just thought it was really funny because the whole book up until that point, despite her and Rome not being together, like their history is talked about, and it's made a very clear point that Rome knows Daisy better than anybody else. They are, you know, thick as thieves, and it's like he can read her mind. That is how well he knows her. Once he has access to her body again, and in that way, that all kind of goes out the window. Being in Daisy's perspective, it's very clear that she's not doing well, and she's using Rome as a distraction. From how she hooks up with that other guy, she doesn't care who it is as long as they're keeping her from thinking about how upset she is about Christian. But like I said, due to the access that they have to her body, they don't care about her mental state. They don't care that she's not doing well. They don't even care to try to figure out, right, Rome and Daisy hadn't hooked up, for years at least? And then she's finally letting him, and it's going on forever. They're not talking because she won't let them talk so they can keep doing it. And Rome doesn't even think to ask her why until finally he figures it out, and then he gets mad and leaves because she was just using him. But it was like, maybe if you had a conversation a little bit more before, you wouldn't have run into that problem. And then similarly, I don't remember the characters' names. It really like fell flat despite being like the most prominent part in the book for me. How Daisy gets drunk and she's trying to seduce that one guy that she had hooked up with from before, and he was like feebly trying to like brush her off and ignore and stuff, but obviously he gives in to her like almost any man would. No one is a good guy and no one is a victim in this situation, but from my personal perspective, I really do look down more on the men in the situation. One, because like I said, Rome is claimed to know Daisy better than anybody else, but he clearly doesn't. And then the other guy, after barely trying to resist, he just gives in to Daisy because that's what he wanted to do. And it really stood out to me because both Magnolia and Daisy are these very beautiful women who are surrounded by men who love and care about them and want to protect them. In these interactions that both of them have, Magnolia with Tom's actor friend, and then Daisy with Rome and this other guy. It shows how being wanted and validated by men really does nothing for you, despite how beautiful and sought after both Magnolia and Daisy are, and how they're constantly told how amazing they are. They're still disregarded, mistreated, and used by the same men that claim to care so much about them, and left with the emotional labor of having to help themselves as well as in the hopes of developing this connection with X-Man that they're dealing with. Moving on to Christian, he was the other main character in Daisy Haites. I like to call him Daisy's BJ, despite how part of the tension between Daisy and Christian is the fact that Christian is really hung up on Magnolia and has very strong feelings for her as well. I did not like Christian's POV. He was very disrespectful and honestly kind of gross when it came to Daisy and Julian in particular. I just don't like Christian that much, to be honest. He really doesn't do that much for me. He's honestly kind of a weak character in my opinion, but when it comes to BJ, he's a freaking saint. But it is Christian's perspective that really affirmed my opinion that like BJ is the problem, because looking from Christian's perspective and seeing like the friend group and everything, and how as a person who's interested in Magnolia, how BJ is like very antagonistic towards him, it just shows that there's something wrong with BJ. BJ is the problem and he needs help. And something that made it annoying to read Christian's perspective was the fact that he was kind of constantly complaining about his friends and the group and how everything was and da-da-da. And it's like, if you don't like it that much, King, get some new friends. And he does say the reasoning of like, you know, they're all part of the same world and it's easy for them to be friends, but it's clearly not that easy for you to be friends if you're having a very hard time in your friendships and with these relationships with the people around you. Christian was just kind of a whiny baby. He lashed out a lot, he spoke in anger a lot, and he was pretty cruel to Daisy and just Magnolia, and I just don't like Christian. It was kind of a letdown because another reason why I wanted to read the series was because of like the whole mob family thing. I wanted to see how it was done. I don't think I've ever read a romance where there was like a mob family, a crime family, and I was really interested in it. But despite Christian being the second, you don't see anything from his family's work, and that was a big letdown for me. That's really all I have to say about Christian, and I'm talking about Julian next because he was the third most prominent character in this book for sure. I actually really liked Julian, even though he was in the background more. He was still, you know, a somewhat pleasant character to read. He is a bit overprotective of Daisy, but it makes sense with their history and everything, and it doesn't seem too toxic, especially in how he tolerates how much Christian disrespects him. It bothered me more than it bothered Julian, but I would have been I don't even know if someone was talking to me like the way Christian talked to Julian. Like, Christian would be talking out the side of his neck to him. And I guess Julian is supposed to be more of a main character in the next books because him and Magnolia are supposedly supposed to be together. So I think that was why he was so prominent in this book. And unlike Christian, we see more of the crime family side to what he does. And yeah, we got way more backstory, I feel, than with either BJ or Magnolia. And so that added a little bit more depth to Julian and Daisy. But as the story went on, Julian's parts became kind of boring along with the rest of the book. It just wasn't as motivating to read as Magnolia Parks was. And then the whole ending, the climax, she did kind of try to do a similar thing that she did with Magnolia Parks, but it just didn't hit as hard and I wasn't as invested, and she didn't do enough with the crime family stuff to really have it hit. If you're watching this, I hope you have read the book and you know what happens, but how Julian kidnapped the kids of a man who was skimping out on getting him his money, and Daisy finds out and she gets very upset because her and Julian have this agreement that despite them committing crimes, they do not mess with kids, they do not harm kids, they don't do anything involving children. And obviously Julian went against that, and I understand Daisy's reaction and being viscerally upset at Julian, but her shooting herself in the stomach really didn't make sense. I guess, yeah, if she wanted them to get out of there, that's something that she could do, but like, it just didn't like work for me, you know? Yes, she's gonna probably be irrational with it, with how traumatized she was as a child, but it's like, he didn't hurt the kids, he kidnapped them, yeah, and they were of course terrified, but he had no intention of hurting them. He just was gonna keep them for ransom, and he's a criminal. What do you expect? It blew up into that whole thing. And then how afterwards she's like not involved with Julian anymore, she doesn't talk to him, and as well as Christian is finally like, oh, we can be together, and she's like, no, because I can't be involved with this crime stuff anymore, I can't do the crime stuff anymore. And I'm like, I get it, but also it doesn't even seem like Christian is that involved in the crime stuff, so I don't know why that would be something that would prevent them from getting back together, but it just is what it is. But yeah, like I said, the ending of Magnolia Parks was a lot stronger, and this one for Daisy Haites just fell flat for me, and I really have no interest in continuing with the series. And just final thoughts, I really was hoping that these books would be a lot higher in quality, but I got what I got, and they were entertaining enough. I understand that these are books where the characters are not meant to be likable, but everyone is just so insufferable. I don't think I can keep going, and especially if BJ and Magnolia end up being endgame, I really do not want to keep reading these books. And Christian and Daisy, I'm not at all invested in, so I don't really care to find out if they end up together. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haites, these very bad romances. But what do you think of these books? The reason why I ended up reading them is because of Kayla from Books and Lala, and how like she loves these books, and I was hoping I would get a little bit more out of them, but they're just really not for me. But are you someone who really enjoys these books? Are they 5 stars for you, or are you similarly to me where they were entertaining but overall painful to get through? Let me know your thoughts. We can definitely argue in the comments if you want to, but thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more of me and hear how good of a singer I am, you can check out my music channel and original music all under the name of Shy Fighter. Like if you want to like, subscribe if you want to subscribe, comment if you want to comment. I don't know, do whatever you would like to do. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you when I see you. Farewell.